Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The Season 4 meta here in Warzone is super competitive. After Season 4 Reloaded, we obviously saw a handful of changes that really balance things out a lot more, as I've talked about in my previous meta breakdown video. And today we're going through and breaking down the new top 10 best loadouts you want to be running for this half of the season. Real quick, as we get into all these, let's start first with our equipment and our perks, because this is going to stay the same on every single class that we break down today here, unless I mention otherwise. So I'm still running with smokes. These are just so clutch in so many ways. You can use them for cover, for rotations. They're the sort of cop-out answer to a bunch of different problems. For lethals, I'm kind of all over the place. In ranked, I've been running Semtexes and drill charges. Those are both really strong right now. Semtexes are obviously used for certain situations and they're really powerful. Drills are also good for other situations. So either or there you can go with, and that'll be good. And then of course, if you're playing like pubs, you're playing Resurgence, knives are clutch because you can get those insta finishes. So depending on what you're playing, I'd recommend one of those three. Then for perks, this pretty much is always the same on all my loadouts right now. Overkill, double time, fast hands, and high alert. Restock obviously got nerfed with the launch of Season 4. Not really been using that as much. And that said, if I can, I do have one specific ghost loadout that we'll talk about in this video. And I try and switch to that if I can midway through the game with that second loadout. That way I can obviously stay off the radar. But that's not as important anymore just because there are the new various different plate carriers that can act as ghosts or can act as bird's eye in certain situations. Also, for what it's worth mentioning, that bird's eye can be really good right now because it kind of overrides ghost after the new update as well. So you can definitely experiment there, but this is the standard perk setup that I've been enjoying for some time, and it still works fine here in Season 4 Reloaded. And as mentioned, that's the same on all the loadouts here today. But getting into the actual weapons now, we can just quickly breeze through these. First combination is going to be a very basic one. We just talked about this the other day. Actually, this, in my opinion, is the easiest loadout to be running in Warzone. The Lachmann 5.56 and the ISO. ISO caught a slight nerf. It's still a super competitive SMG, and really all the top tier SMGs are right there with one another right now. Lachmann 5.56, obviously a little bit lower damage, but its accuracy and how easy it is to use make up for that, and it turns into a really competitive, realistic TTK. So the setup here, not really changing all that much. We got the AMOV V4 optic, but as always with the optic category, if there's one that you're more comfortable with, one that you want to use for your own personal preference, always use that instead. This is the one that I like. Just make sure you're tuning for that furthest eye position and the faster ADS. We're going for the 60-round extended mag, obviously necessary with the TTK. We got Ripper underbarrel for the better stability, stabilization, just going to make it more accurate over long range. Echoless 80 suppressor. This gun is so easy to use that you don't need a heavy suppressor with the added control. This will do just fine. You don't have that slower ADS because you do have this on there. Then lastly, I go for the RAPP barrel. It's that 3-in-1 combo, better control, better velocity, better damage range as well. Just optimizing this even more for the mid to long range. That said, if you're super comfortable with this loadout, you could drop either Ripper or the RAPP barrel and throw on high velocity. If you want that, more consistent hit reg feel over the mid to long range, that's an applicable option as well. Then as far as the ISO 45 goes, this setup has stayed true since the first day that this dropped. Actually, I've stuck with this and it's a setup I love. It is iron sight, so that's something to take note of. I know a lot of players don't like the irons. I live with them because I like the benefits that this class setup offers. But if you wanted to drop maybe a rear grip or a laser for an optic instead, you could absolutely do so. But I go for the Lockshot KT85, just your basic compensator. It'll make it a bit easier to use if you find yourself in like the mid range with this thing. Makes it a bit more standard and consistent there. 7 milliwatt laser, you're going to see this on a lot of the subs for that better ADS and sprint to fire, obviously tuning to enhance that. 45 round drum is the max here, so of course we're using that. Sheer rear gripper is going to be for that better ADS and sprint to fire as well. Then the cheetah stock gives you all sorts of mobility benefits, which is super convenient. Just makes this even more aggressive and ideal for SMG engagements. I love this thing. Not as good as it was before the update, but still a fantastic SMG choice. Loadout number 2 actually consists of the SO14, which yes, is still very good if you're landing your shots. Now, keyword is landing your shots. I use this in semi-auto mode, but you can go back and forth between semi-auto and full auto. They're both really dominant. Then I go with the MP5, which is now a lot more competitive because of the ISO nerf. But as far as the SO14 goes, this has been my standard setup for a bit, and because this didn't see any drastic changes with Season 4 Reloaded, no real need to change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So AMOT V4 yet again, 50 round drum, Ripper underbarrel once more for that better stabilization and stability. That's especially important on semi-auto weapons. It's going to help with the recentering there and just make you more accurate over range. Sakin Tread 40, this is going to be nice if you're spamming this, because you can, if you have a good trigger finger, spam this pretty quickly, or if you're using it in full auto for the better control that this offers. And Then Boremaster Barrel again is going to be that 3-in-1 control, range, and velocity. So this thing is still one of the top tier choices, one of the best choices for higher skill players or those who have mastered this gun. You're going to breeze through enemies with this thing. It's just super strong and super dominant. And then for the MP5, again, we're focused on a lot of mobility here and just making this thing super efficient up close. We go for the Falcon Barrel. This is going to help out with movement speed and ADS speed, which is kind of a no-brainer, right, for going for a close range style weapon. 7mm laser again, same deal as before on that. The TCG-10 rear grip is going to help out with the control here. There is no ADS and sprint to fire rear grip, so instead we just tune for that in this case. I go for the 50-round drum. That's going to be totally sufficient in all modes. Then overpressured ammo. This will help out with that target flinch. Basically, whenever you land shots, the enemies are going to experience more flinch, which might cause them to miss a few more shots and win you the gunfight. That's more of like an experimental sort of preference attachment here. Frangible could be a really good option as well because it's going to inflict that wounding effect, so that could be a good choice. If you need a muzzle, you could go for that. If you wanted a stock for like better mobility or something, you could use that too. Certainly got some options here, but this setup's been working really well for me. Loadout number 3 features the Sakin and then also the Vaznev, another very easy setup to use. Sakin, low recoil, decent damage for an LMG, but because it's so easy to use, just like the Lachmann, again, its realistic TTK is going to be super competitive, and the Vaznev's just another great SMG choice up there with the MP5 and then also the ISO as well. The Sakin setup here really just focused on making it as easy to use as possible. AIM-OP V4 yet again. Stip 40 rear grip is going to be for straight up better control. That said, if you wanted to use high velocity on a setup like this, you could probably drop Stip 40 and it's still going to be a very easy weapon to use. This setup in particular, though, really maximizes the control and like it's just not going to move when you shoot it. Edge 47 underbarrel for that better stability. A little bit less cons here than Ripper because it's a lighter underbarrel essentially. Polar Fire S, again, a lighter suppressor, so no added control, but it's not going to slow down your ADS as much. Then Silver Series Barrel, once more, is that 3-in-1, better recoil, better velocity, better damage range, better pizza Papa John's. You got it all going on with that. Great mid to long range gun, obviously much slower because this is an LMG, but it gets the job done. And then for the Vaznev, I mean, this setup really has not changed in some time just because it's held its own. And once more, if it's not broke, don't fix it. This has just been a really consistent setup for me. So 45 round mag, true TAC rear grip for that better ADS and sprinter fire. Atrazat stock here is going to be for a better sprint speed and strafe speed, so just even more mobility. You can also tune for a better ADS on there as well. Olay laser, that's going to be the equivalent of the 7mm. You'll see that on SMGs as well. Just depends on which laser is available for the attachments. Then the Cast 1 barrel, this will extend that damage range ever so slightly, which the initial damage drop off on the Vaznev is super severe, so extending that range can be super clutch and actually help you win those close range gunfights because it's the difference of having the first damage drop off or the second damage drop off in terms of your TTK. So that one is actually pretty important. Now, Loadout 4 is, well, a fun one if you're a fan of toxic setups, right? Initially, I got the RAPP, and this is just a great go-to weapon. By the way, as we're breaking down all these setups, you can like flip-flop the primaries and the secondaries, mix and match if you wanted to. They all kind of work well with one another outside of the sniper loadouts, which we'll get to here in a bit. But the RAPP as a primary is insane. This thing fries. It's relatively low recoil, insane fire rate, insane TTK, and of course we got to feature the brand new Guardian as well, which is wild in Warzone, especially with this setup, which is a bit different from the one that I initially talked about as I've been experimenting around with it a bit more. But RAPP setup similar to the one that we just covered a few days back. AIM-OP V4 yet again. TCG-10 rear grip for the better control there, straight up, just making it easier to use. 100 round mag, just because the fire rate on this thing is so fast, the less you have to reload, the better, right? Ripper underbarrel for that better stabilization. Talon suppressor, which is one of the heavier ones, so you're getting velocity, range, and some control out of this as well. Just makes the weapon easier to use and a lot more reliable and consistent in the mid to long range. So this setup, this gun in particular, is one that I've been running a lot lately. It works great in pretty much all modes. Then the Guardian, like I said, this setup's a bit different. It's more toxic, basically. We are using Dragon's Breath rounds here. Now, we're tuning for velocity and range. That's not going to make a huge difference, but it's something. But we're also using this in burst fire to allow us to use that Dragon's Breath. So it's kind of going to act like the Doof Doof from Warzone 1. It also has slightly better range in burst or semi-auto than it does in full auto. So this thing is obnoxious and it's going to dominate close range. I got the DCP-0 stock. This is basically just for better mobility there. The ULO 66 laser, or the ULO, this is for better hip fire since we're doing that a ton with a shotgun like this. Then lastly, I go for the mobile barrel. Gonna extend that damage range, but also help out the movement speed, which is pretty nice as well. It's gonna be annoying to die to this setup, but if you're the one using it, it's very, entertaining, I would say. Now, loadout number 5 features the RAAL and the P90, two just solid weapons. RAAL, as we know, is one of the kings of TTK here in Warzone. Thing just fries if you're landing your shots. It's a bit more difficult to do because this does have some recoil that's pretty noticeable, but if you master it, you're good to go. And the P90 allows you to fly and fry. Great mobility, great speed, and a relatively competitive TTK as well. So as far as the RAAL setup goes, once more, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've been using this one for some time. This is my go-to in ranked, and man, it just works. AIMOT V4, Stip 40 rear grip for that straight up better control, just like over on, I think the Sakin it was, though. If you want to drop Stip 40 and throw on high velocity, that's totally fine as well. Dune underbarrel is going to help out with stability and steadiness, so this is actually a super clutch attachment, really going to make the weapon easier to use. Nielsen 90 suppressor, this doesn't help out with control just because if you add a control based suppressor on here, the ADS is going to be 5 to 7 business days, just not worth it. Then Rhino barrel going to help out with velocity and control, sort of a nice little 2-in-1 there. That's really clutch for a weapon like this that definitely needs that extra help with control where you can get it. So if you land a shot to this thing, good luck to those enemies because they don't stand a chance. As far as the P90 setup goes, this is pretty much all focused on mobility with the exception of the KT85 just helping out if we are in that mid-range again, where this thing is actually really good as an SMG in the mid-range, one of the faster TTK options. 7mm laser, the light rail is going to help out straight up with movement speed. We can actually tune for that better sprint speed and sprint to fire, and it's basically just going to be the same iron sights. I got the Q900 rear grip here for better ADS and sprint to fire. Then just behind the face cam, I've got the TV TAQ-v comb attachment, which once more also helps out with that better ADS and sprint to fire as well. So this thing is actually one of the fastest SMGs and fastest weapons in the game in terms of mobility once you build it out like this, which I absolutely love. Now, as we continue on with all the loadouts here today, quick reminder, if you are new to the channel, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, patch notes, loadouts, you name it, it is right here. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, and if you enjoy this video, if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it as well, would be really appreciated. Also, shout out to my friends over at G Fuel. If you are grinding Season 4 Reloaded here, playing ranked, checking out Vondel Battle Royale, doing some of the new camo challenges for the boys crossover, do yourself a favor, get that added boost with some G Fuel. Right now, code Immortal is going to get you 30% off of all tubs on the site, or if you want to go out and try G Fuel for the first time, they got plenty of starter kit options as well. They've got some great flavors available for cans. They quite literally have something for everyone, so throw in code Immortal at checkout, take advantage of that increased discount. Link for that will be down in the description below. Next up here, we got the HCR, a really solid sort of like hybrid LMG, almost AR LMG hybrid, mixed with the MP7, another fantastic SMG and very similar to the P90 in a lot of ways in terms of mobility, its overall TTK, the ease of use, just another really solid option for close range. HCR setup here, I've really been enjoying. It is a little bit, weaker than some of the other LMGs that we've covered, like for instance, the RAPP or the RAAL, but it's so easy to use. This is arguably one of the easiest weapons in the game, up there with the Lachmann 5.56. Surprise, surprise, AIMOT V4 yet again. Stip 40 rear grip as well for that better control. I do use high velocity here. There's not much purpose in using a barrel because it's not going to change the weapon too much in this case. So high velocity works well. We're tuning for that better velocity and range on there. Ripper under barrel, and then the Harbinger suppressor is one of the heavier ones. So better control, better velocity, better range. Just overall increasing that efficiency in the mid to long range. Really solid weapon here for Resurgence, for standard Al Mazrah. I love it. And then the MP7, again, a weapon that I really haven't had to change around much since we started using it, just because it's been so consistent and it's not like overused or abused or anything, so they don't nerf it ever. It just stays as being a really reliable option. Lockshot KT85, just once more as sort of like a precaution for those mid-range fights. 7mm laser, 50 round mag. You could also jump up to 60 if you wanted to as well. That might be a bit overkill for some players, but either or there will work just fine. Soldier rear grip for the better ADS and sprint to fire, then the RXT stock for better sprint speed and a better ADS speed. Oh, and also that better crouch movement speed, which you're just going to be taking advantage of so much. Kind of a useless pro there, but it is what it is. MP7, a very reliable SMG choice. Did my game just crash? It knew I was talking smack about the crouch movement speed, and it said, all right, you won't get to try the crouch movement speed. Now, hopefully I can look at the menus without the game just completely breaking on me, but this next setup consists of the MX9, which is a great SMG. I have it here mainly for solos because really it's not as practical outside of that, but where you're good with this thing, close to mid-range in solos, it fries. It's a much higher skill weapon that you could use in duos, trios, and quads, but it's going to take a lot more patience to learn how to really navigate engagements with this small ammo count in squad sizes like that. I pair this with a TAQ-v. It's a powerhouse. It's a really solid option right now. We've covered this in detail previously if you caught that video. MX9 setup here, largely focused on some control and some mobility. We got the S901 barrel, which helps out with range and movement speed and velocity. Really unique barrel that really attacks all the necessary areas here for using this as like a close to mid-range SMG. 32 round mag is the max though, and that's why outside of solos it's going to be so much harder to use, and it's really meant for solo gameplay in specific. I don't like the iron sights here too much, unfortunately, so I do just use a basic blue dot, still tuning for the furthest eye position and faster ADS. Behind the face cam, I've got the C11 riser comb. This is going to help out with that better ADS speed, better sprint to fire per usual. And then the Q900 rear grip, yet again, better ADS and sprint to fire as well. Really good mobility, really good TTK here, just so limited by its magazine capacity. Then the TAQ-v, I mean, this thing's got a lot of recoil. It's noticeable for sure, but when you land your shots, it's going to erase enemies. AMOV V4, combat rear grip in this case is going to help out straight up with that better control. Unfortunately, I don't really feel like I can drop Ripper or the combat rear grip here for high velocity as much as I would like to use it, because the velo is not fantastic here. You need the added control and stabilization so much that I feel like it's kind of necessary to run each of those. 50 round drum, the standard I think is like 20, which is nowhere near enough obviously. And then Talon suppressor here, which again is that heavier suppressor, so better control, better range, better velocity. Something to note here is that this does have the Scar iron sights, so in theory you could drop AMOV V4 and use high velocity instead there if you're okay with not having that great visibility over longer ranges, just because you would be using iron sights. And we do have a couple of different sniper setups I want to break down today. This is the first one featuring the MCPR. Now it's titled ranked meta because this was the meta in ranked before they nerfed explosive rounds there, but in pubs this is a great one-shot sniper option here. Obviously they're all slow, they're all a bit tricky to use because the velocity sucks, but it's going to work well for one-shot sniping. Then I also pair this with the Razorback, which is like the best close to mid-range weapon in the game right now as far as rifles go. It's pretty low recoil and its TTK is super fast, especially like in the mid-range. I really love it there. So this setup is pretty standard, 60 round mag just because the fire rate is so fast. Komodo compensator here, which only focuses on horizontal control because the vertical is not all that difficult, and this really makes the weapon a lot easier to use and a lot easier to predict. Ole laser for the better ADS and sprint to fire. Behind the face cam, I've got the LTX Eclipse comb here, which is just straight up for, again, better ADS and better sprint to fire. Then I also go for the TR preamble stock, which is for better aim walking speed and sprint speed. So once more, just making this even more aggressive, sort of mimicking SMG type mobility, but with the power of a rifle, which I really love. Then as far as the MCPR setup goes, obviously we're using the explosive ammo so we can one-shot knock. I go for the 5 round mag, so this makes the ADS a lot faster, which is really convenient. I like the Forge TAC Delta 4 as a scope here, but scopes on snipers are totally preference. Use whichever one you are the most comfortable with, and I do tune for the closest eye position here just so I can have that clearer picture and slightly better range without using a super long distance scope, right? Nilstein 90 suppressor will give you that better velocity. Damage range doesn't really matter here. Then I also go for the OMX barrel, which again, better velocity. There is a damage range benefit there, but that's not really relevant since we are focused on one-shot sniping. Pretty solid option here. It's the best of, I think, the one-shot snipers that we have that's meant for mid to long range and like that heavy-duty sniper build. Now, as I mentioned at the start, I do have one ghost-based loadout that I actually trade out overkill for tracker. Then I use ghost instead of high alert. If I can grab this mid-game because of that second loadout or whatever, I'll try to, because this can be really clutch. And the combination I use here is the M4, which somehow shows as a Razorback. Okay, now it's an M4. This game's functioning as intended. And I pair this with the FTAC Siege, which is a really good pistol, basically a pocket SMG. M4, it's all the reliable, right? Low recoil, really good TTK, especially in the mid-range. It just works well. AMOV V4 here, 60 round mag, high velocity for that better hit reg in the mid to long range, or at least the better feeling of better hit reg, right? Ripper Runner barrel, Harbinger suppressor, very standard setup here. Don't really need a barrel all that much because its TTK is already very impressive in the mid to long range. It's about as straightforward as it gets. And then the FTAC Siege, like I said, pocket SMG, and it's kind of overkill at that. We got the 72 round drum on here. Not needed, but it's so much fun. You could get away with using 50 though if you don't want the extra slowdown there. I go for the SIR 160 rear grip for the better ADS and sprint to fire. I go for the FTAC Siege stock, which actually helps out with some recoil and just makes the weapon really easy to use. We also tune for the better mobility there. The Diode laser is going to be like the equivalent of the Ole, better ADS, better sprint to fire. Then the CMRN barrel for better recoil control and a little bit added velocity. The velo is not great on this thing. Like if you're fighting underwater, it really sucks there. That'll help out a little bit with that. But this is a super clutch pistol setup that you might need in certain situations, water, end game, or getting that ghost loadout. This can really help out a lot. And then lastly here, we've got one more sniper loadout, this time featuring the Signal, which is a lot more friendly, and also this setup would work for ranked if you wanted to, because you can spam this. It can't one shot, but if you want that quicker, I guess, TTK, if you're not hitting only headshots like you have to with the explosive ammo to get that one shot knock, this is a much more forgiving option, I guess you could say. So this setup here, first up, we got the inline stock. This will help out with that sprint speed and the ADS speed. The con of negative recoil control is irrelevant because this is a sniper, right? I like the SPX 86.6 time scope. It's a nice little variable zoom. Again, though, if you like a different scope for your long range sniping, feel free to use that. Olay laser for the faster ADS is really what we're focused on there. High velocity, so it's easier to predict the bullet drop and the bullet lead there. Then the Bruin counter op suppressor, basically for that better velocity on there. We tune for that as well on the slightly faster ADS speed. Solid long range sniper setup. It's slow, it's heavy, but it's also fun because you can spam it if you're really accurate. This is a super strong gun. And then I pair this with the 74U, which now features the brand new KSTV barrel, which is actually meant for better range and velocity, making this even more efficient as a sniper support rifle. Now that said, if you wanted to use the Chimera here, you could use that too. It's the same setup that we've covered in previous top 10s, but I did want to feature the 74U here because it's got this new barrel. I'm tuning for the better steadiness and range on that. Outside of that, the other stuff is pretty standard here. Olay laser, 45 round mag, X2 rear grip for the better control, tune for the inverse of better mobility. Then the Atrazat stock once more for that better sprint speed and strafe speed. But great sniper support complement here, works fantastic as like an SMG AR hybrid. And that being said, those are the top 10 best loadouts to be running here in Season 4 Reloaded. All of these choices you can mix and match, and they'll be really reliable and really dominant with one another. That is going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications to always stay up to date with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.